the townsfolk began gathering before the sky even thought of turning blue, drifting like shadows toward the old freight platform at the edge of the settlement. It had once been the loading dock for lumber wagons arriving from the northern slopes, but the lumber dried up years ago, and with it went the men who had once worked honest trade. What remained was a warped structure of splintering boards, stacked crates, and a reputation for hosting the kind of events decent people refused to speak about openly. Yet today, the clearing was full not with decency, but with the restless hum of men drawn by morbid fascination, greed, or the simple knowledge that misery was about to be put on a stage. Mary felt that misery in her bones. She stood on the platform barefoot, her toes cracked from a night spent walking across frozen dirt roads. Her once blue dress sagged off one shoulder, its hem shredded from briars and broken fences she'd stumbled through. Dawn's cold settled deep into her skin, but she forced her arms tighter around the tiny newborn pressed against her chest. His body was warm, a small blessing, but too weak to cry with any force. His soft whimpers brushed against her collarbone, reminding her of the promise she had made before he even entered this world: "I will protect you, no matter the cost." The crowd below paid no mind to promises or suffering. They swayed, shifted, jostled. Boots scraped on dirt, spurs clinked. Someone coughed wetly. Another man laughed. A few leaned forward, hands on their belts, eyes glittering with entitlement. Mary recognized some of them, men who had once tipped their hats to her in passing. Men who had bought goods from her late husband's workshop, polite once, predatory now. The auctioneer wiped his greasy forehead with a stained handkerchief, the kind that looked like it hadn't been washed in a season. His suspenders strained against his belly as he stepped forward, puffing up like a rooster. He tapped the wooden crate beside him, drawing the attention of the murmuring crowd. "Let's get this started," he barked, not bothering to look at Mary. "We all know why we're gathered here today." Mary clutched her child closer, her arms tightening instinctively. She wished she could shield him from the sound of the auctioneer's voice, from the smell of sweat and tobacco wafting through the crowd, from the ugly anticipation that grew thicker with each word spoken. The auctioneer continued. "Her husband left behind debts he didn't pay. And by law, your law," Mary whispered, though her voice barely carried past her own lips. The man ignored her. "By law," he repeated, louder this time, "the court has ordered her contract and care be sold. And since she went and had herself a baby before the estate cleared, the child is included." A few men chuckled under their breath. Others nodded as if this were all perfectly reasonable. One man wiped his mouth with the back of his hand and muttered something Mary didn't want to hear. The world dimmed around her for a heartbeat. The baby shifted in her arms, making a small sound, half whimper, half attempt at a cry, and she bent her head instinctively, kissing the top of his fragile, downy soft hair. She whispered to him, too quietly for anyone else to hear, "I'm here. I'm still here, little one." The auctioneer slapped the crate again. Starting bid hoofbeats cracked across the clearing like a warning shot. The men turned their heads in their unison, the murmuring dying abruptly. The sound grew louder, steady, unhurried, deliberate. Not the quick clatter of a man eager to join the spectacle. Not the heavy pounding of a sheriff's patrol. Something different, something colder. From the dense tree line to the north, where the mountains cast their long shadow, emerged a horse the color of midnight. Its muscles rippled beneath thick winter fur, breath puffing in pale bursts into the crisp morning air. The rider sat high in the saddle, broad shoulders wrapped in a fur-lined coat, a wide-brimmed hat pulled low enough to hide most of his face. But the rifle resting across his lap was unmistakable, lying well maintained, and positioned like an extension of his body rather than a tool. The crowd parted without being told. Some men stepped back, others shifted nervously. One man swore under his breath. Even the sheriff, leaning lazily against the fence moments earlier, straightened. Mary stared, frozen. She had never seen this man before. She didn't even know mountain folk ventured this far into town. They kept to the slopes, the forests, the ridges, where only the harshest souls could survive. People whispered about them: hunters, loners, men who preferred wolves to neighbors. The stranger guided his horse right up to the edge of the platform and dismounted. His boots hit the dirt with a solid, final thud. He didn't posture, didn't puff up his chest like the town men did. He didn't need to. His presence alone felt like a storm rolling in. He looked at Mary first, not her torn dress, not her bare feet, not the bruises on her arms or the way she trembled from exhaustion. He looked at her, into her eyes, as if he could see the fear lodged there, the desperation, the quiet defiance she still clung to. Then his gaze shifted to the child in her arms. Something changed in his expression. It wasn't softness, not exactly. More like a decision solidifying behind his eyes. A line drawn, a verdict delivered internally before he spoke a single word. The auctioneer cleared his throat, his voice suddenly warbling. "Sir, this is a private." The stranger lifted his rifle. He didn't aim it. He didn't threaten. He simply raised it with the steady, practiced motion of someone who never bluffed and never needed to. "Auction's over," he said, his voice deep, steady. and edged with a cold certainty that made the hairs on Mary's arms stand on end. Asterisk, the sheriff stepped forward. Now hold on, asterisk, I said, it's over. The rifle clicked, the clearing went silent, utterly, terrifyingly silent. Asterisk, Mary felt her breath hitch, her knees weakening. Not from fear, no, not this time, from something unfamiliar. The sharp, overwhelming ache of hope. Asterisk, her baby, stirred. She adjusted him carefully, her arms shaking. The stranger's gaze softened by a fraction when he watched her do it. Asterisk, finally. He spoke again, his eyes locked onto hers as though the rest of the world didn't exist. Ma'am, he said, do you want to leave here with your child? The words broke something inside her. Yes, she whispered. Please, yes. He gave a single, quiet nod. Then you're coming with me. Asterisk, and for the first time since her world collapsed, Mary felt the fragile, trembling certainty that she and her newborn might survive long enough to see the sun fully rise. Mary didn't remember climbing down from the platform. She only remembered the stranger's hand, large, warm, despite the morning chill steadying her elbow, as though she were something fragile, something worth handling with care. The crowd remained frozen, eyes wide, breaths held, waiting for a spark of violence that never came. The sheriff seemed torn between asserting authority and preserving his life. In the end, self-preservation won. He took a slow step back, hand hovering near his holster but never daring to touch it. Asterisk, the stranger guided Mary toward his horse, his movements slow and deliberate, as though giving every man in that clearing time to reconsider their courage. None found enough. Boots shuffled backward. No one met his eyes. Asterisk, Mary clutched her newborn tighter, heart pounding so hard she felt it in her throat. She expected someone to shout, stop, or she's not yours to take. Expected a hand grabbing her, a fist, a threat, but nothing came. The cold air hummed with a quiet that felt almost unnatural. Asterisk, when they reached the horse, he turned to her and spoke softly, as if they were standing alone in a quiet field and not surrounded by men who had been one bit away from owning her. Can you ride? Asterisk, she shook her head, shame prickling her skin. She had never learned. Her husband always said it wasn't necessary, that he would take her anywhere she needed to go, that she belonged at home, that horses were for men. Asterisk, the stranger didn't seem surprised. I'll lift you, he murmured, and before she could protest, he slipped one arm beneath her knees and another around her back. She gasped. He paused. You all right? His voice held no impatience, only concern. Asterisk, she nodded, flustered. His strength was startling, effortless, solid. He raised her as though she weighed nothing more than a sack of grain and settled her on the horse's saddle. The child in her arms barely stirred. Mary adjusted him carefully, tucking her shawl around his tiny face to shield him from the wind. Asterisk, the stranger swung up behind her, the saddle creaking as his weight settled. His presence enveloped her, warm, grounding, immense. He didn't touch her more than necessary, but even the slight brush of his arm as he held the reins felt protective rather than possessive. Asterisk, without a word to the crowd, he clicked his tongue and steered the horse away. Asterisk, the air behind them remained eerily still, broken only when someone finally dared breathe again. But by then, the stranger had already turned them toward the mountain trail, leaving behind the clearing, the sheriff, and the men who would never speak of this day except in whispers. Asterisk, hours later, after the town had disappeared behind hills and pine forests, Mary finally found her voice. Sir, why did you help me? Asterisk, he didn't answer right away. The horse's steady gait carried them along a narrow path, hugging the mountainside, the wind rustling through tall grass and distant pines. The morning sun warmed the air, just enough to make the ride bearable, but Mary still clung to her child for heat more than anything. Asterisk, when he finally spoke, his voice was a low rumble against her back. You needed help. Asterisk, her throat tightened. Lots of people saw that. No one else stepped in. That's on them, he said simply. She looked down at her baby, who slept unaware of the world changing around him. They were going to sell us, she whispered. Like property. Asterisk, I know. Asterisk, the wind carried the faintest tremor of anger in his tone, not toward her, but toward the memory of what he'd witnessed. Mary felt it like a shield wrapping around her. Asterisk, they continued upward, the trail growing steeper. Mary finally risked another question. Why me? Why not just walk away? You don't know me. Asterisk, I don't need to know someone to see when something's wrong, he replied. And a mother and her newborn being auctioned off like cattle. That's wrong. Asterisk, his bluntness startled her, but also eased something inside her. She had grown used to excuses, to men who justified cruelty with rules or debt, or that's just how things are. This man spoke with the clarity of someone who had long abandoned the world's twisted logic. Asterisk, after another few minutes, he added quietly, besides, my ma would have haunted me straight into the grave if I'd ridden off and left you there. Asterisk, the unexpected hint of humor tugged a tiny smile from Mary's mouth. It felt foreign, her face wasn't sure how to make that expression anymore, but it lingered. Asterisk, what's your name? She asked softly. Asterisk, Calder. Asterisk, she repeated it. testing the sound. Calder, thank you, asterisk, you don't owe me. Thanks, he said. Just focus on breathing and keeping that little one warm. We've got a ways to go. Asterisk behind them, the land stretched into a mosaic of goldfields and distant blue ridges. Ahead, the mountains loomed larger, their peaks snow-tipped even in late spring. Mary had never been this far north. The air smelled different, here cleaner, sharper, as though the wind carried secrets from the high cliffs. Asterisk as they climbed. The trail narrowed until the horse had to pick each step with careful precision. Mary swayed with the movement, exhaustion tugging at her eyelids. Her body ached from days without proper rest, from childbirth, from fear. At one point her head dipped forward, and she jerked awake. Asterisk Calder noticed. Lean back, he murmured. I've got you. Asterisk she hesitated only a moment before allowing her shoulder to rest lightly against his chest. His coat was warm, filled with the scent of pine resin and wood smoke, comforting in a way she hadn't expected. Asterisk, you can sleep, he said. You're safe. Asterisk the word simple, steady unraveled the last of her resistance. Safe. She couldn't remember the last time she'd felt that. The newborn in her arms snuggled closer, his breath warm against the hollow of her throat. Mary closed her eyes. When she opened them again, the sun had dipped lower, slanting gold through the trees. Calder had stopped the horse near a hidden clearing where a small cabin sat tucked between boulders and pines. Smoke curling from its chimney. Asterisk, we're here, he said. You and the little one will rest inside. I'll get a fire going, warm water, something to eat. Asterisk Mary stared at the cabin, unable to speak for a moment. The valley below stretched forever, untouched and quiet. It felt like another world, one where the cruelty of the town couldn't reach her. Asterisk Calder dismounted first, then lifted her down with the same gentleness he'd shown earlier. She swayed from fatigue, and he steadied her with a hand on her arm. Asterisk, you'll be all right, he said softly. I won't let anyone touch either of you again. Her eyes stung, not from fear, not from shame, but from the overwhelming realization that someone she didn't know, someone who owed her nothing, had chosen to stand between her and the world that tried to destroy her. Asterisk, she looked up at him, the afternoon light catching in his dark hair, his jaw shadowed with stubble, his expression steady and sincere. Asterisk, Calder. She whispered, the name a fragile anchor in her shaking voice. I don't know how to repay. Asterisk, you don't have to, he interrupted gently. Just breathe. He'll take care of your child. That's enough. Asterisk, and when he opened the cabin door for her, guiding her inside like something precious, Mary felt something she hadn't in a long time. Asterisk, a beginning.